rethinking big data, managing resistance to change in an AI world, and an overview of my consulting journey. Those are just a few of the topics we're going to cover here in episode 173 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode 173. This is the podcast that has everything to do with digital transformation, including digital strategy, software selection, change management, and anything related to implementation. Basically anything about digital transformation that you need to know, we cover here in this podcast. And my name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. Third Stage Consulting is an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And joining me as my co-host is Darian Fiakuski. Darian, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great episode planned for you today. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, produced by Major Tom Productions. And we're going to cover a lot of different things here today. We're going to get into some audience questions to start, some questions we picked up on social media here in the last few days. And we're also going to get into some newsworthy topics here today. One is going to be about rethinking big data. The other is about some use cases of the new Apple Vision Pros, those new glasses that the augmented reality types of glasses that Apple recently launched. So we're going to talk about some potential business use cases of those glasses, in addition to just being kind of a cool gadget that might be fun on the consumer side as well. And then we're going to have our guest on the show here today, Isabella Lundberg, who's a change management expert. She's going to be on the show with me talking about how to manage resistance to change in a post-AI world. So how is AI affecting resistance to change and people's acceptance of new processes and technologies? And we're going to dive into this super interesting topic, sort of that intersection of the human side of change as well as super cool technology on the AI side. We'll talk about how those two worlds collide and how to navigate those challenges. And then finally, last but not least, later in the show, we will play you a video clip of my consulting career journey. It's a video I recently released on my YouTube channel where I talk about basically how my career in consulting progressed. It might be an interesting case study or example of how you might manage your career. So hopefully that'll help you in that regard too. So all that being said, we got a lot to cover here today. What are some of the social media questions you've got to get us started here, Darian?
Yeah, we have some really interesting questions today. So the first one is, thanks for sharing and your honesty, Eric. It seems hiring often focuses too much on recent titles, sectors, and location, despite using tech. Why let safe checklist hiring limit innovation and talent? How do we break free from checklist hiring that values potential and drive and passion over recent experience? Cookie cutter hiring holds us back globally. Can you share videos or your perspective on how to shift old mindsets and embrace hiring based on potential?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And actually that question sort of hits at the heart of our recruiting philosophy at Third Stage. We tend not to hire, your traditional checklist consultants, the people that have certain criteria. You certainly want to hire people that have experience and transferable skills, but we're not looking for typically consultants that have 20 or 30 years doing the same thing or same type of consulting. We look for people that have some interesting, diverse backgrounds and some skills that we think are transferable into the type of consulting that we do. And the reason for that is because a lot of times, in this industry, at least in the consulting industry, this may not be true for other industries, but in the technology consulting industry, there's a lot of Kool-Aid drinking that happens. And I would go so far as to say there's a lot of brainwashing that happens in the industry too. There's a lot of, you're trained a certain way. A lot of times when you work for a software vendor or in a software vendor's ecosystem, you're trained to believe the hype, which makes sense. I mean, that's the job of the software vendors, is to create an ecosystem that's drinking the Kool-Aid, believing the hype and promoting the hype. But for that reason, we typically don't hire people that came from that world. We typically hire people that maybe are in that world, but a little jaded and see through it, or we hire people that were never part of it, but they have some sort of skill set that we think would work in our consulting industry. And I think for other industries too, even outside of what we do in consulting, I think there's a lot to be said in the question there as far as looking beyond just sort of, does this person meet, X, Y, and Z criteria? Now, again, it's hard because you need people that have the right skills, but you also don't want to be blinded to people that might have a lot of potential, but they don't have the exact cookie cutter or stereotypical background that might help in that area. So I think it's a great point. I agree with the hiring philosophy and the recruiting philosophy that this person points out. The problem is I'm not the one hiring for most organizations, so you have to convince other organizations that that's the right way to recruit and hire.
Yeah. Could you point out some soft skills maybe that you look for when you're hiring that maybe they could maybe adapt when they're applying to positions?
Well, the biggest thing I look for is people that are good at listening and know their audience and ask the right questions. And to me, that's a super hard skill to teach. So if I meet someone that has sort of that engaging personality that draws you in, that asks about you, tries to understand you, and then tailors their conversation or their message to you, to me, that's a really important soft skill for any sort of, I think, any sort of career, but especially in consulting, where your job is to sell your ideas and to sell your knowledge, but also understand what the clients might be looking for. So I look for that ability to listen. I definitely look for work ethic, people that came up, through the ranks of, even if they don't have consulting experience, but they have, say, a military background or a sports or athletic background or something that suggests that they're used to discipline and hard work. And I also, even though it's arguably not legal for me to do this, I do look at people's personal upbringing and backgrounds, kind of to the extent that I can ask the question. I have to be careful because I can't violate, federal U.S. hiring laws, at least in the case of our U.S. employees. But I do like interesting backstories of people that maybe didn't have, an easy upbringing or had some sort of adversity they had to face early in their lives. That, to me, that shapes people obviously as a human, but also as that's the type of person you're going to get. You're going to get someone with a little grit and determination, maybe more so than if you just look at the checklist of stuff. So those are a couple things I look for when I'm hiring.
Yeah, super interesting. Good stuff. Hopefully that was a good explanation for our question today. But our next question is about the U.S. Air Force and Navy YouTube video. They said the cases of U.S. Air Force and Navy you illustrated in your YouTube videos look to me like they adopted this strategy, letting outsiders implement their systems, and the projects failed squarely. These industries should choose a decent ERP development and execution framework that comes with a universal accounting module and let their own IT personnel build the ERP applications from scratch. Decision makers in these sectors selecting any pre-built ERP application and bringing in outsiders to implement for the organizations is the recipe for disaster in terms of both technology and finance. Can you share what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, I think those are some really good points, and it's an important alternative or a potential strategy to consider for any organization that's going through digital strategy. I think too often we get myopically focused on one answer that we think is going to be the best, just the best example or the best key to success. And while there's certain things that you have to do to be successful, like get leadership support and allocate the right resources to the project, have a clear strategy and vision, there's certain things that no matter who you are, you need to make sure you do. But if you start getting into these, if you start putting the blinders on saying we must have a commercial off the shelf software and we must not customize that software because if we do, we're going to fail because other companies have failed because they customize the software too much. It's sort of like you're afraid of the wrong things. Companies don't typically fail because they customize. Typically, they customize because they're resisting change. And so they end up customizing the software to do things it wasn't built to do because they're resisting the change. So the real problem isn't they customize. The problem is that the root cause is that the organization resisted the change and sort of demanded customization to the software. And that's just one example I'm using here, but you have to look through the hype and through the the messaging that you might hear from consultants, analysts, software vendors that say, commercial off the shelf software is the way to go. A lot of people associate custom development with like, that's a bad thing. Like you shouldn't do custom development. There's absolutely nothing wrong with custom development. In fact, I'd argue that that's a better way to create a competitive advantage, especially if you're a for-profit organization, maybe not for government, but for a for-profit company. If you're investing in IT to create something that only you have, yeah, you've got to maintain it. Yeah, there's some complexity there. Yeah, you have to start from scratch in some cases, but if that's your competitive advantage, you want it to be difficult to do. You want to create that barrier to entry so other people can't copy your secret sauce or whatever. And if you deploy just standard off the shelf software and don't customize it, don't change it, you're using the same instant or the same software that everyone else is using, you sort of water down your competitive advantage. So I think there's absolute benefit to it. And in the case of the military, though, or in the case of the government, there is enough, certainly on the accounting and budgeting and finance side, there's enough off the shelf software that sort of handles what the government needs are. I guess I would question, as long as it's not something that's a national trade secret or a national security risk, then I would question, why custom develop something for a government that's not focused on profitability or competitive advantage? There's other governments throughout the world that probably have the same needs. So I would maybe take it with a grain of salt and selectively identify areas that you might customize. But certainly if the software you're deploying doesn't handle your needs and you have to customize something, whether it's that software or you're creating some separate third-party custom development software, then absolutely do it. I mean, it's not, it's your business and you've got to do, invest in technology in a way that makes sense for your organization.
Yeah, makes sense. It's really interesting. And I'm really excited now to kind of shift gears into our newsworthy topics today. It's something that I think is really fun, but we'll see what the audience thinks.
Yeah, we'll talk about those Apple Vision Pros, those metaverse augmented reality sort of glasses that Apple launched, I think, late last year. And we're going to talk about some business use cases of those Apple Vision Pros. We're also going to talk about how organizations are rethinking the concept of big data. And then later, after we get through these newsworthy topics, we're going to have Isabella Lundberg on the show. She's going to be on to talk about how to manage resistance to change in an AI world. And then we're also going to talk about my consulting journey and some of the lessons from that. So be sure to stick around. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control. Steve, we've chatted before, but remind me and our audience a little bit more about Epicor and where you're focused these days.
Hey, Eric. Yep. Good to talk to you, and thanks for asking. So Epicor, what we do is we make and sell cloud software for the global supply chain. And when I say that, when a customer purchases our software, we're committed to running their day-to-day business. And this would include everything from finance and procurement to production and sales. It's a responsibility we take very seriously, and it's something I believe we're very good at. We've got an employee base that has the deep expertise to understand their business and run their business. We also compete against 2 or 3 of the largest software companies in the world. So it's not good enough for our products to be good. They have to be consistently great, and that's a really important focus for me. So great products, deep industry expertise. We also focus on the essential workers that make those businesses run. We like to say Epicor's got you covered from the shop floor to the top floor. And when we say that, we really mean it. So that's Epicor.
It also suggests that you're not necessarily trying to be everything to everyone. You've got a pretty deliberate purpose and focus.
No, you're right. We really don't. So we focus on the make, move, and sell economy, which would really be manufacturing, distribution, and retail, like a retail operation. Well said. We don't try to be everything to everyone. We really do specialize and focus. And it is one of the secrets of our success. I guess it's not too secret anymore, but it's an area of focus for sure.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 173. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm here with Darian Fiakuski. We're both the Third Stage Consulting Group, and Third Stage Consulting is an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And we are the sponsors of this podcast, and the podcast is produced by Major Tom Productions. You can find new episodes every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can also listen to or watch all the past episodes of the show at that same website. So check out transformationgroundcontrol.com for new episodes every week. And Darian, you've got some interesting newsworthy topics here for us today. What have you got in store for us?
Yeah, so the first one is about Apple's Vision Pro. They're high-end glasses that everybody saw when they came out and everybody was wearing them. So this article discusses how the Fortune 100 companies are looking to use these Apple Vision Pros. So some examples include like Porsche is using them for real-time team collaboration for racing. Lowe's is using them for an immersive kitchen design experience. And then Dutch airline KLM is conducting aircraft engine maintenance training for employees using these glasses. So some really interesting, all different ways that these glasses are being used within companies. They've also just seen a lot of collaboration with remote workers and really collaborating with then anybody who is maybe on site at that point and creating more of a work environment while still being remote, which is kind of interesting. So there's a lot of different ways that companies have been adapting and figuring out uses for these glasses. But I want to get kind of your take on it, Eric. So are you kind of surprised to hear what a strong interest the Fortune 100 companies have in purchasing these glasses? Was that something that you expected?
Well, I'd say a year ago I would have expected it, or maybe 2 years ago. But now I wouldn't have expected it now, just not because the technology hasn't advanced or it isn't viable, but just because, so many organizations are trying to get their arms around AI, and that seems to be the focus of where a lot of the enterprise technology space is and where businesses are focusing their technology investments. So it's interesting to hear that the metaverse still exists. Other technologies other than AI, believe it or not, they still exist. So it's cool to hear that they're still using the metaverse in that way. And I think that is something that is a super unique customer experience. If you can collaborate with your customers and your suppliers and sort of your network of partners as an organization, especially if you're a manufacturer of products that are highly engineered, I could see the metaverse being an enabler of that. I know in this podcast a couple of years ago, we talked about how I think it was BMW and maybe it was Siemens, someone like that. They had collaborated on a metaverse product development sort of approach to where BMW could collaborate with their suppliers on designing and building cars like a prototype in the metaverse. And it allowed them to make design decisions and try different things in the metaverse. So I thought that was pretty cool and something that's pretty unique that could be a unique differentiator for a company like BMW, especially with a complex, supplier network and whatnot. So I think there's a lot. It's super interesting. I'm as you were describing this, I was thinking that that should be a YouTube video I do where I buy the Apple Pros and I figure out like how we could be using the metaverse in business settings. It might be kind of an interesting YouTube video.
Yeah, that would definitely be cool. I'm down to try them out. I feel like that would be cool. What do you think now that Apple has recognized that businesses are using these Apple Vision Pros, they have started to target companies and explain uses to them that they could potentially use Apple Vision Pros for. So what do you think about Apple's strategy of kind of, obviously they still have the consumer side of it, but their strategy now of targeting businesses with the Vision Pro headsets more so almost than consumers at some points?
I suppose it makes sense. I mean, it's a high ticket item. I think, these Apple Vision Pros, aren't they like $3,000 or something like that?
Yeah, I think $3,500, I think.
Yeah, so you figure the average consumer probably isn't going to be able to afford that or isn't going to shell out that kind of money. So the enterprise space is probably more ROI there. You're probably going to get more businesses to invest in this, knowing that they can actually get some business value out of it, assuming they can get business value out of it, versus trying to convince a consumer to spend $3,500 on it. So, but then again, I'm surprised that people pay $1,000 for a cell phone. So, I guess I'm old school in that way. But so I don't know. I think it's an interesting strategy for sure. And I suppose similar to how Apple has pursued their strategies in the past. Their whole Macintosh strategy back when Macs were first coming out was to go after the educational market, sell Macs to schools, and then that sort of increased people's adoption and familiarity with Macs, which then helped consumers buy the product too. So I suppose maybe that could be part of consistent with how they've launched other products in the past as well.
Yeah, definitely interesting. One last question. How do you think the adoption of Vision Pros, which is kind of something that obviously the metaverse has been around for a while, but something now maybe more consumers are experiencing with companies, or companies are just experiencing within themselves? How do you feel that that influence of something that's so relevant in companies that are using it daily can influence the future of mixed reality and technology?
Well, I think it's sort of like it kind of reminds me of what we've all become accustomed to since COVID, where we're used to collaborating on, Zoom or Microsoft Teams and just or FaceTime video calls. We kind of got used to a certain amount of collaboration and interaction remotely. And I think what this does is it sort of accelerates that sort of movement towards looking for ways to use technology to collaborate faster and more effectively and efficiently than we would have in the past. So, if you look at, how much it must cost Porsche or BMW or Lowe's or any of these companies that you're talking about, to create that physical experience or that physical collaboration is hard to scale and it's expensive and it's just not efficient. But if you can use technology to collaborate with suppliers and collaborate with your customers to, in the case of Lowe's, to, show them what a design could look like in reality. First of all, you can't really do that in real life. Even if you could, it'd be highly inefficient and not scalable. So it's a way to scale it. It gives you new opportunities. It gives you another dimension to, interact and provide a better customer experience, better supplier experience, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I'm excited to see. Hopefully, you purchase one so we can use it in a YouTube video or something.
Well, and then it'd have to be a business write-off. So the man would pay for it. I wouldn't pay for it. It'd be the company. Yeah, third stage. We'll stick them with
Thank
with
you,
the bill
third
for
stage.
that. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But kind of speaking of things that businesses, right? AI or the virtual reality kind of still exists. It's not just AI. I kind of want to shift our focus to the next article, which is talking about big data, and an article that really is emphasizing the need for businesses to not just overlook big data and just go straight to the newest thing, and that it's not completely going away. So this article really dives into the evolving landscape of data management post big data era, you could say. It is emphasizing the enduring value of a foundational data practices that, despite the decline of popularity of the term itself, companies still need to use big data in order to really be successful, is what they were saying. This piece really underscores the need for collaboration between business leaders and data professionals, and are advocating for a more integrated approach to data science and AI, kind of combining instead of just going straight to AI and analytics and getting rid of data. How do you, Eric, perceive the transition from the big data era to the current focus on AI and analytics? And do you believe that the foundational practices of big data still hold value in today's data-driven landscape?
Yeah, it's a great question and point. In big data and just data in general has been something that's been talked about for decades about how important data is and data migration. And if you want good reports, you need to have clean data, garbage in, garbage out. All that stuff has been, we've been talking about this for decades now. And the cool thing about AI, I think, is that now it's sort of forcing people's hands. Like you just can't. In the past, you could get by having corrupt data or dirty data, whatever you want to call it. You could get by because you could just clean up that data and manually create the reports you need after you clean out or sort the data you want. Very manual, time intensive process, but you could fake your way through it. With AI, you can't fake your way through it. AI is just not going to work, and it's going to have these what they call hallucinations, where it's giving you faulty information, and you're going to trust that information, but it's faulty because you gave it bad data, and so it just simply isn't going to work the way it needs to work, and it's going to be recommending things, or I don't want to say making decisions for you because it's not really making decisions, but it's going to be making recommendations for you and giving you information that's faulty and flawed. So I think the good thing with AI, in addition to the fact that it's just a cool technology in general, but I think it also, the secondary benefit is it's now forcing these organizations to do something they should have probably done 20 or 30 years ago, which is clean up their data, get better data governance in place, and make sure that people understand and are trained on how the processes should work to maintain that clean data.
Yeah, super interesting. To that point with clean data, how do you suggest that collaboration between business executives and data professionals should go in the future in order to either clean up data or make sure that AI is able to get the best data possible to give people reports and everything that they would need from AI?
Well, there's certainly a technology / IT tactical cleanup of data that needs to happen. So someone needs to go in and clean up the data. So for example, if you think about an organization that has duplicate records, you've got, Darian Fiakuski is in my system 3 times because I can't spell her name, Fiakuski. I can't even pronounce it, let alone spell it. So, so therefore, every time I enter Darian's name, I can't remember how to spell her name, and it ends up creating a new record for Darian Fiakuski, even though she's the same person. So that's an example of like just one mistake that a human makes that could create a problem with the data. Now, when I go run an AI model to do some predictive analytics or to predict what you're going to buy or what I should be selling you, now the data is not right because I'm picking one Darian Fiakuski, but it doesn't have the whole data set because I messed up the master data. And so the reason I bring this up is because, yes, we have to clean that up. So now we have to merge those in this one small, tiny example. We have to merge Darian Fiakuski into one master data record and all the data that goes with it. But now we also need to make sure that organizationally and operationally, people that are touching the system are trained on how to do this better so that they understand if I create a new Darian Fiakuski, it screws up the entire downstream process. And here's what you need to do instead. Perhaps there's a checkpoint in there where they have to go look up. They can't spell her name. They look it up, or I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm just making stuff up, making up hypothetical examples here. But that's the sort of thing you have to work through is how do we avoid those sorts of mistakes so that operationally we keep that data clean. And one thing that organizations have done too, in addition to just making sure that anyone who touches data or creates data or changes data, that make sure they trained and they understand their roles and their processes and their responsibilities. There's also the data governance piece, which is more of, I'd say, the guardrails to say, well, should I, as a customer service rep, should I really, should it be that easy for me just to create a new master data record when perhaps that should be a centralized data focused governance function? So, some organizations will have data, like people that own the master data, and they're the ones that create new customer records or new vendor records. If they want to change the chart of accounts in accounting, they're the ones that would be responsible for that rather than decentralizing too much of that. Because if you decentralize that, then now everyone's touching the system and potentially messing up the data. So it's a combination of cleaning up the data, putting the processes in place, training people on the processes, and then having data governance is sort of a defensive measure to prevent some of those challenges.
Super interesting. Yeah, that makes sense with how the collaboration of big data and AI will kind of work in the future. But kind of shifting gears to get into our interview today, it's going to be really interesting for the other part of AI with the human change management side. So, yeah, Isabella Lundberg is going to be on the show, and she's someone that I've just recently met. It's interesting. She actually is not only a change expert, she does digital transformation stuff, but she lives and works less than a mile from our office. So it's a small world. We met on social media, but in the physical world, we live less than a mile apart, or we're very close to each other in the same suburb of Denver, Colorado. So she's going to join us here for a discussion to talk about how to manage resistance to change in an AI world. So we're going to talk about that collision or that intersection between the human side of change that's always been a challenge and continues to be a challenge, but we're also going to do it in the context of AI and other emerging technologies that are super exciting, super advanced, super sophisticated. How are those two worlds coming together? How do we manage change and resistance to change in that environment? So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We'll have Isabella on the show, so stick around. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology-agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstage-consulting.com.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 173. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm here with Darian Fiakuski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, an independent digital transformation consulting firm, and the show is produced by Major Tom Productions. Thank you for being here today. And speaking of being here today, someone new is here with us today. Someone new to the show is here with us today, although I believe we did play a podcast clip of podcasts I did with her not too long ago. We played that for a couple episodes ago, I believe it was. But this is the first time I've had her on directly to interview her. And she's a change expert. She also understands technologies and digital transformation really well, including AI, which is why we're gonna dive into this here today. So with all that being said, I'll let her describe her background in much better detail than I just did. Isabella, thank you for being here today.
Good morning, Eric, and it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, glad to have you. First time on the podcast. I've been on your podcast. We've met before. We've had conversations about this stuff in the past, but it's great to have you here for the first time on this podcast. But before I jump in and just start asking all the stuff I want to ask you about change management, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, if you don't mind.
Sure. We kind of share a passion for obviously not only just change management, but leadership, and being a founder and CEO of Legacy Leader Institute in Matrix Advisory Group. We've been focusing, working heavily with C-suite executives. And as you know, it's never enough of great strategy, but also great execution and implementation needed in times that we're focusing on right now, which is also disrupting teams through either fast-growing startups or Fortune 500 companies, where we really contribute to inspire not only fantastic champion cultures, but also really help organizations to thrive and also be able to really navigate the disruption that we're seeing here in the AI.
Right. Yes, I want to get into that. There's a lot I want to cover there as it relates to that intersection between people, resistance to change, and also AI too, and just emerging technologies too. But before we get to that, though, I guess if we sort of just start at a high level, and based on your experience with helping organizations through change, why in general do employees resist change related to new technologies? If we're all excited about it and we love all the possibilities of technologies, then why do we as employees and why do employee teams tend to resist change?
That is an excellent question. And Eric, as we know, human nature and human dynamics are a really huge factor in that. So we look at things from multiple different perspectives. How is this impacting me individually? And then how is it impacting me professionally, right? Always comes that factor of the fear unknown. Is this going to be something that's going to impact me in reversely, or how is this going to what level of discomfort is going to be created? How can I adjust and change with the environment that is happening? But right now with AI, obviously we're seeing something that did not happen in quite some time. Speed to change, expectations to change that really are affecting people. From one standpoint, I'm seeing for like obsolescence. Am I going to be obsolete pretty soon? Is the AI going to take over, right? It's always better to have a status quo, right? Because at least I know what's going to happen. Then we have something that often happens, and I'm sure you experienced this tremendously as well. It's lack of understanding where we're going, what we're trying to do, who is making decisions, how is this going to be impacting in the long versus short run. But then absolutely lack of understanding. If we don't have a shared understanding, it's going to always backfire, right? And one thing that I'm seeing consistently, unfortunately, lack of adequate training. If we're not having opportunity to train people, what's going to happen? We know it's going to constantly perpetuate that resistance and build up more and more. And as a result, we see some evidence of that with so many organizations.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. Is that the unknown, the fear of the unknown is what tends to cause people to panic or fear or resist change. And when you think about AI and the threat that it poses an opportunity, but it also poses a threat. And I think that's what we have to recognize when we're deploying new technologies in organizations is it is a threat. Even if people recognize that it's a good thing for the business overall, it's that uncertainty that can create the challenges for sure. So
Yes.
I wanted to turn to the audience here just real quickly. Thank you for those that have dropped in the chat where you're joining from, just to give you a sense of where people are joining from in the world today. Meherban from Toronto, thank you for being here today. Dave from Toronto on YouTube, thank you for being here. Alcinda from Johannesburg on LinkedIn, thank you for being here. Banu from India, thank you for being here. And then SAP BW Guru says, always great to hear from Eric. So thank you for that feedback there. And if you have any questions for us, please be sure to drop those in the chat. And I'd love to hear from the audience too while we're talking here. And as I get into my next question, my question to the audience is, what do you think the biggest root cause of resistance to change is? I'd love to hear just your feedback and what you've seen throughout your careers, and maybe you're experiencing some of that resistance to change right now in your organizations. And I'd love to hear from you on your feedback there. So Isabella, getting back to this thread of change resistance and that fear of the unknown and the things that can cause resistance to change, do you find that resistance is more common in certain levels of the organization? Like if we're dealing with mid-level management or frontline employees, senior level management, are there certain types of people or groups of people that you see resist change more or less than others?
Another excellent question, and it's actually really good to kind of look at from multiple different perspectives there, right? What's happening with mid-management, for example, versus frontline employees and how they're being impacted, but also from senior executive perspective. And we see, obviously, that is scales are tipping from multiple different perspectives because the load of responsibility is also shifting dramatically, right? And the middle management is the one that typically is in charge and executing on a lot of heavy duty and does very heavy lifting, right? So as a result, resistance to change does manifest differently depending how is organization structured, but also with organizational different levels. What I found for specific mid-level management and their resistance is because of technology is disrupting their day-to-day operations, the control systems, because sometimes things are happening at once and multiple different approaches, and requires a lot of times to really think about around decision-making and processes, a level of obviously how it impact on their people. Conversely, we're also seeing a lot of things that are happening in frontline because resistance is there due to concerns that they're having related to job security. And right now we're seeing so much shift that is happening. We have a magnitude of jobs, for example, being posted, while in the same time organizations are not hiring, yet they're having tremendous layoffs. And we can also look at why we're doing what we're doing and how we're making decisions. As a result, obviously, they're going to impact not only their performance, and middle management is definitely now stretching their head, what is happening with staff, as well as also with disruptive avenues that are seen day to day. So looking from that perspective, I also have to say, Eric, we have seen a lot of stuff happening also with senior executives, because as you know, C-suite is being tremendously impacted as well, because they typically are maybe excited to get a new technology in organization, to be able to say that they are also going in the right direction to reach specific goals and outcomes. But if it does not happen support from top leadership within an organization, things not going to fly as easy and as effectively as they could, right? So I think it's really important when we look at cohesively to find levels where the impact is the most. And I can have to say always comes to talent. Talent, it's being impacted severely and continues more than ever right now.
Yeah, you bring us a bunch of great points in that response. I mean, beginning with that senior management support. Without that, it's going to be really hard to get people's buy-in and get people to overcome that resistance to change if the executive leadership isn't setting that tone at the top. Here's a question that's sort of related to what you just said, Isabella. It's sort of a good segue into this question from Jan on YouTube. Jan says, what would diverse skill sectors and having young at the top lead to clearer communication and more action? So are there, maybe just to reframe it a little bit, are there different types of demographics or skill sets or traits of effective leadership that can lead to better communication and better alignment and better action from employees?
Absolutely. We have opportunity, obviously, to look at and find avenues. How do we actually culturally engage with each other, regardless of the status or position and title, right? So that functionally and incrementally, because we still see, specifically as a larger organization, it gets still a lot of fragmentation and silos and competing agendas and priorities, as well as rollouts, right? How is the change being rolled out? Who are the truly champions and pioneers and early adopters? And obviously understanding generationally also, we see a lot of younger generation being much more eager to adopt new technologies, while we still see other generations lagging or not necessarily as having as much passion and interest yet another technological change. So when you see that happening, of course, communications, inclusion, and understanding of that vision and direction and the value of it, it's essential.
I'm here with Isabella Lundberg talking about how to manage resistance to change in an AI world. I've got a lot more questions for Isabella, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. I recently published my first book. It's called The Final Countdown: Strategies to Reach the Third Stage of Digital Transformation. And I wrote this book because I really wanted to find a concise way to share some of my knowledge around digital strategy and how to get started on a digital transformation journey. So in this book, I cover 3 different sections. I cover the people, process, and technology aspects of transformation, with the idea that it's meant to be a starting point, a launching pad for organizations and team members that are going through digital transformations. So I encourage you to buy this book. You can get it electronically, you can get it paperback, or you can get it in hard copy as I'm holding here in front of you. You can get it by going to thefinalcountdown.com. You can also search for it on Amazon if you shop at Amazon. Otherwise, just go to thefinalcountdown.com. Love to hear your feedback on this book as well. So I hope you check it out and hope you enjoy.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me or visit our website for more details.
These things take time. Mom and dad, they have a good life. But what am I gonna do with mine?
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 173. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm here with Darian Fiakuski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformation journeys. And I'm here with Isabella Lundberg, and we're in the middle of a chat talking about managing resistance to change in an AI world. Given the topic here today, it was going to be hard not to get into AI and just jump right into it, but we're getting a bunch of questions already about AI. So maybe we'll sort of jump into the eye of the storm as it relates to AI, if you will. So this is from SAP BW Guru on YouTube. They say, coming from SAP skill set background, how can we evolve in terms of AI-driven world? What skill set is required to move in the right direction towards, we'll just call it technology in general, including AI? You know, what kind of skill sets can we expect to have, or should we be thinking about that might be different now than what we might have needed in a pre-AI world?
What I'm finding consistently that is pattern, and I know this sounds so basic and simple, but everything comes with a phenomenal leadership skill sets, right? Because those, even with AI existence, AI should be leveraged and utilized as a tool. If we have a tool that has tremendous power, but we don't have individual capacity to not only lead ourselves, but lead others and focus on to really develop us more individually as great leaders, be able to have, as we come back all the time to those soft skills, which in my mind are the most essential skills, which is critical thinking, able to juggle multiple different priorities, and at the same time be able to also absorb and understand capacity of people and their availability, as well as what the tool can also produce. With speed of change, obviously, and transformation that is occurring simultaneously on individual level, organizational level, we obviously have more than ever need to adapt to not only how to use the tools effectively, but also how to leverage them, that we really take in consideration ethics right now, because of lack of regulations. I'm seeing so many things that are falling as default, or are just like, oh, we will just do it our way or ask for permission later. We're seeing so many issues as well. So it's also a great opportunity to really show up and lead in a way where we can truly show not only what's possible and how to leverage in the best light, but also how it's possible to transform and do something better with it. And as a result, create ecosystem internally first within organization, as well with our clients who are really eager to receive quicker, better, more effective service or our support.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And you're sort of alluding to how we can, develop those skills and use AI to define a future state of what we're going to be when we grow up as an organization. And this sort of leads into a question here from Meherban on LinkedIn. Meherban says, for AI implementations, does our approach to documenting future state processes for ERP change? As AI is increasingly incorporated into ERP systems, I'm wondering if it necessitates adjustments to our process mapping methods. So what have you seen along these lines as organizations try to figure out what that future state is going to be and how we're actually going to use AI, and to create that clarity that you were talking about that you need to have for an organization not to resist change?
I love how you tie that, because every time we have a new technology, it doesn't matter what technology, but now when we talk about specifically AI, we affect three elements there, right? We affect process and people, and technology itself, right? So understanding what's in there for me, and then again, understanding how is AI going to help? How is it going to affect the role? Is it going to make things easier for me, or is it going to also completely make me obsolete as like, am I going to be needed? That is one of the biggest concerns actually that I'm finding right now, that a lot of people are panicking what roles are going to be eliminated as a result, because we're seeing so many different statistics and data and anticipation what future holds. When it comes to the process itself, obviously has a tremendous avenue to not only help with the process implementation and helps to speed things up, but the reality is how humans observe and learn. Can they really go as fast as AI able to dictate? And that is truly important. Again, leadership call to step back and really make sure that speed of acceleration and processes are thought through, and also that people that can truly absorb and go with that change can go along side by side.
Yeah, it's a great point. And as we talk about executives in organizations and in that leadership component of managing change and overcoming resistance, this is from Alcinda on LinkedIn, and Alcinda says, from an executive point of view, whose responsibility or mandate would you say is change management? Do you foresee a chief change officer position coming up in the future, given the importance of this activity as part of digital transformation? Super interesting idea and question. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Brilliant question, Linda. I love it. And actually, I hope it does come to that level, because what I'm seeing is right now, one of the biggest issues that we experienced with previous economical downturns, every time when we fear, where we're not sure, and when it's a lot of uncertainty, what companies typically do, hoard the money. They actually do layoffs. They try to contract and shrink and wait. And what that does, obviously, is doesn't help, right? Because right now we're seeing something really interesting, explosion of AI and speeding up and need to continue to learn to grow. But at the same time, the growth that is expected, that is affecting bottom line, it's not there yet. And as a result, what we see is trimming the most important asset to every organization, which is talent. So a lot of organizations are rolling changes without even considering and taking in consideration change management. As a result, it's backfiring on so many ways. People are not, first of all, they're very much so fatigued right now. But in the same time, they're not as eager, even with the big dangling carrot, what this AI can really do for you, because they're really seeing that they're not being included in dialogue and process and conversation. And sad part is, I can tell you how many organizations I'm being through in conversations in the last 4 years, just since disruption with COVID, post-COVID, and today, that still do not effectively leverage or utilize that, and as a result are seeing symptomatic issues. And the ones that actually do are the ones that are thriving, growing, and accelerating their growth, and then consistently are keeping and having that sense of stability and sustainability. So I just want to say that I really hope that gets the point of the be independent role. And I also hope that C-suite executives starts really looking deeper, understanding the cause and effects, and they're willing to spend and invest, which truly matters the most. Because who cares if you have a great technology, and if it's not utilized, it's not adopted, and you never see ROI, KPI with that technology in your organization.
Yeah, and it's interesting point, interesting question, interesting response, because it kind of reminds me of maybe 20 years ago. Remember when a lot of CIOs reported to the CFO? You sort of had they created the CIO position, but it was still kind of buried in the org chart. A lot of times you'd have it report to the CFO. And I feel like it was just in the last maybe 20 years where it started to shift, where now CIOs report straight to the CEO. In many cases, they're part of the board, they're part of the executive team. And it makes me wonder, is that forthcoming for the change management role? Will that eventually have that level of attention and that level of commitment from organizations to create that sort of a senior executive role for the change management discipline, which would be a huge win for the discipline, if you ask me.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting you asking that, because we also seen as huge, tremendous change also on the technology side. So C-suite, and specific with CTO, now we have CISO, and just in general, but you have two different bodies that are actually managing one particular area, right? So what's going on also there in terms of disruption? And as you know, a lot of digital transformation happen on that side first. So it's like, how is that translating with CFO, with CEO and CIO, and actually with sales and marketing? And one interesting thing is that I'm constantly watching, and I find it fascinating how much teams, the top guns that are top sales executives, are still so sluggish on accepting the shift, the change, and changing the approach. How do they actually sell? And the fact that we see huge discrepancy there as well, meaning if you have now tools and opportunities and you're not adjusting as fast in positioning, organizations not going to be able to turn the ships as fast as they would like to. Pouring more money is not going to also solve the problem as long as they're not willing to make a fundamental change and approach how they're talking about what they're selling, specifically related to AI products and services related that directly are being impacted, which also shows that, again, human nature, where the adoption needed to happen the fastest, quickest way, it's even there lagging significantly.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. I want to come back to a point that from early in the conversation, Eduardo on LinkedIn made this comment here about why people resist change. And this is sort of in response to my question of why do you think the biggest sources of change resistance, where is that coming from? And Eduardo says people won't perform as expected either because they don't know why, they don't know how to perform, or simply because they can't. So it's interesting. So it's the why, the how, and the can they do it. Address those answers in advance and people will embrace change. And I think that's a great point.
Absolutely. And then the last one, specifically training, how do you foster the training? How do you foster learning opportunity? Do you have a culture of learning to begin with? I'm dealing, when we're dealing with a lot of people that are doing things for 10, 15, 20 years, they're so inflexible. And, because in the past, certain things work very well. And then they're wondering why they're not working as right now and why they're losing the footing. So always starts with that aspect as well. Obviously, when it trickles down, but if you don't have the tools, you don't have a proper education, and you don't have a proper training, things are not going to go as fast as they could be, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm here with Isabella Lundberg talking about how to manage resistance to change in an AI world. I've got a lot more questions for Isabella, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. People oftentimes ask me how I built such a strong social media following on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and other outlets. And the fact of the matter is it took me a long time to build a following through a lot of trial and error, making a lot of mistakes. Had I known that there were companies out there that could help me build my brand, I would have done that a long time ago. I didn't know that, but the good news is that there is today a consulting firm that will help you through building your own personal brand through some of their training programs. The company is called Roloff Consulting, and if you're familiar with Emma Roloff, she's someone that I've had on this podcast before, and she's well known in the digital transformation space as well as the sales space, and she's big on TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And she and her husband have started a training course and a training company that focuses on helping people build their personal brands and helping them to sell themselves digitally. So whether you're a salesperson that's trying to reach more customers or you're an individual that's just trying to build your personal brand, that's something that they help with through their training programs. And they've offered listeners of this podcast a free 5-day LinkedIn challenge. And I encourage you to check it out. I've included a link below for this podcast. If you go to the podcast notes, you'll find a link that gets you free access to this 5-day challenge where you'll get step-by-step guidance. You'll get real results. So you'll get some tangible results from the program. And you also get a special offer at the end of it. So it's exclusive to listeners of this podcast. Be sure to check out the link below if you want to work on building your personal brand, or if you're in sales and you're trying to reach more people, whatever the case may be, check it out. It's free to listeners of this podcast. You can check it out via the link below.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. if you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 173. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm here with Darian Fiakuski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformation journeys. And I'm here with Isabella Lundberg, and we're in the middle of a chat talking about managing resistance to change in an AI world. And here's a question that I think is really interesting. I don't see who it's, well, I do see who it's from. It is from Sid on LinkedIn. And this is this is a really interesting question. I like this because it's sort of bringing together not just change management and AI, but now a third dimension, which is data. And I think there's a nice parallel or a nice connection here, intersection with what we're talking about. And what Sid says is within many corporate environments, data is defragmented and in silos. In many instances, the BI team performs data transformation and makes the reports work. If the foundation of data is not addressed and continually governed, many AI initiatives will likely fail to complete that one. So he's talking about how there's a need to maybe get to the root cause of why we have bad data, because we have to have good data in order for AI to work. And in the past, we could always sort of gloss over it by just, creating some reports or cleaning up the data to create the BI or the reports we need, but that doesn't quite work. It doesn't work in AI. You need clean data. You need a lot of data. So how do you see organizations sort of changing their culture, their mindset, their processes, their roles and responsibilities to address this whole need for data hygiene or whatever you want to call it?
I love that question, and I love it. Kind of ties also for previous comment. But where I want to go with this for a second. Again, I know that you guys are probably sick and tired hearing this. Whatever leadership accepts and tolerates, it's going to continue. So if they've been tolerating or accepting types of reporting or level of the DR, right? Unless they're willing to make a shift and change. And I think, again, it's so important to really understand the root causes, right? So when poor data hygiene exists and persists, obviously calls for change in not only processes around, but also how a team that is responsible for it is really gathering and initiating that. What obstacles are there? And we know that are tremendous obstacles there. And if leader is not there to help to remove those obstacles and also help to yield the right direction where things are going, it's going to always be issue. We see no matter what we're applying, we see these problems circling around. Now, whatever we, as we used to call it, sweep under the rug, it's going to be glaring obvious. And that's why we're seeing such a huge shift. You see C-suite, a lot of people are exiting or asked to exit because of dysfunctionality. Right now, we have more than ever tools that can really pinpoint and show us, oh, we didn't measure these things correctly, or we didn't align this correctly. So it's more and more questions, right? And when we have more and more questions, we're seeking to find more answers. Sadly, we see also a lot of blame, but it is also a great opportunity, again, with the right type of leadership and mindset to shift that around. Because again, those tools and processes, when they're in place for right purpose and reasons, they're gonna work effectively. Until that happens, we're gonna always stumble. So I've been in situations, I'm gonna use this quick example, where if we're not looking at the root cause, we're gonna make poor decisions strategically. And this is exactly what happened when we were looking specifically exit from previous year. And right now, the course that we're taking on, for example, it's having tremendous implication as a result of ineffective data. So again, back to that was, who is responsible? Who is the responsible at the end of the day to present proper reporting? And how far we're willing to go, right? And it's the same thing as a pain point. When do we change? When pain point gets severely high, right? That's when human nature, that very rarely we change proactively, progressively, right? Voluntarily, right? Very few people are the ones on that small percentage that will do that. So I really hope that some organizations will not wait to that paying that exponentially higher, because it's obviously just looking at people and their tendencies and their behavior already showing where the thresholds are. So to again circle back with this, Eric, with that particular question, again, unless leaders are stepping up and really understanding what their responsibility is, I think then we're going to have a lot more of those issues coming along in months and years to come, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great, insights there, and I totally agree with you. What about we haven't talked about this yet or touched on it yet, but what about multinational and multicultural organizations where you have a diverse workforce and geographically dispersed, a lot of different cultures you're dealing with? How does resistance to change manifest itself in those types of organizations?
Obviously, that is more prevalent, and it's not going to go away even for companies that believe they're not multinational, multi-geographical, cross-cultural, and multicultural. But everything that is shifting now, when we're seeing more of the gig economy and more also point of entry from different geographic regions for applying for different jobs that are remote, right, and that allow different point of entry, we have something really important that is always being diminished in my mind. From early on, that cultural attitude and cultural aptitude towards authority and hierarchy and structure or organization, and how that trickles on different global segments. Further away from headquarters we know that we have creating a lot of different subcultures, and understanding that also sometimes that could be positive, but sometimes also can be negative, right? Depending of scenarios. But that creates resistance to change, specifically because if we're not understanding those intricacies, it's going to always be a problem. Specifically, how is authority or hierarchy being also perceived in those specific regions in the world? Second piece that I found fundamentally challenging is communication style. Everybody has their own style, and whatever we perceive that we actually communicated is completely different how it's going to be received, right? And not only just the word of choice of words, the speed, pronunciation, etc., but every culture obviously has their own nomenclature and some specific verbiage that really sits and has a different meaning. Even though we may understand the meaning of the word, might have also completely different connotation and meaning in that particular culture. So it's very important to really understand the complexity related to that. From aspects of specifically adapting to change in those environments, we have some cultures that are more flexible. I mean, I come from Europe, for example. I was always proactive on so many things, and I've really never had the mindset of that I'm seeing that some of my colleagues had or still do. And it's interesting also to look at, what I'm learning from them and their style and their approach and level of ability and willingness to change versus mine. But really helps to also understand that with a diverse workforce, we also have talent that brings different values. And then it's very important to understand how this really translates, right, into that aspects. But I have to say, no matter where we are from, even with 8+ billion people around the world, we have all of us different motivation factors. What may motivate you, Eric, or anybody watching and listening, completing me, motivating me differently. And it's our job from leadership standpoint to really understand the makeup and DNA of team talent that we're running, that we're monitoring, managing, and leading, or whatever might be scenario, and understanding those triggers, understanding their motivational factors. And when we know that, then we can then adjust and look at and tailor that specifically to their needs. But I have to say, also a lot of cultures that I find are very triggered because we have a very workaholic culture here in the United States. Other cultures have a very different perception of time and planning and time when they're off, when they're on, are they accessible when they're off the clock, or whatever might be the case. So it's very important also to really look at those implications and how do we also interact and ask for certain engagements or additional work to be done, etc. And frankly, on the end, I really believe this is something that we don't consider as often, which is truly the risk tolerance. Besides that, you and I might have a completely different motivation factors. You and I may have also completely very different risk tolerance. I might be proactively seeking the risk, while you might be also trying to be more conservative and also trying to weigh things out or look at things from a different perspective. And a lot of that has to do, again, how we approach it, how we communicate it, how we include others, and how do we really allow conversation and discussion around, and then arrive collectively together for path forward.
Yeah, great insights. I mean, those are good, all really good points. Speaking of more good points, this is from Alcinda, and she has another great question here, which is, how important is change management for customers, specifically to ensure we are indeed catering for real needs and they too are given the necessary training to navigate new technologies being implemented? This is not something that I hear happening a lot. So how do customers fit into this whole change and transformation journey that we're talking about here?
Again, excellent question. And I always say, right now, we're all striving to have a customer excellence. We cannot ever reach customer excellence if we don't have organizational, operational excellence, because that bleeds to customer no matter what, right? As a result, to get at that operational excellence, we need to have a team and individual talent contributors, right? Excellence as well. So when we reach that, which is all about, again, change, being able to adapt to all the shifts that are happening, then we can foster that and clients can see that. It's not just about how we communicate, how frequently, how well we cater, etc. I had a scenario where we had 4 or 5 different changes of team members on team because people being let go, or people are being shifted between different projects, or it's simply constantly different people that are coming on board to take over conversation or clients' care. So it's like, what's going on, you know? And again, clients are very in tune with a lot of different dynamics, and it's very important also to foster a sense of transparency and be able to also show up in their best interest, right? Because a lot of times when we're seeing, when we have, oh, this is a long-term client, we had them for years, we kind of get on autopilot. And we don't really pay keen attention, even though we have secure a relationship for next 3, 4, 5 years. How are we showing up and nurturing that relationship? How are we also seeking to see what else could possibly be that we can support and add in our day-to-day way of taking care of that particular client, right? And that has really shifted so much and deteriorated in some aspects of some organizations. And as a result, right now, consumers are getting smarter. They have so many choices. They have so many opportunities. So we're seeing also clients changing where they're going, where they want to be served, and by whom. And so it's very important also to pay attention to that as well.
Yeah. So make them part of the journey as well. I mean, we can't forget about the customers, because after all, that's why we're doing the work we do in most cases.
Yes.
Here's an interesting quote from LinkedIn. And the quote is from Jacob Bernowski, who I'm not familiar with, but it's an interesting quote. The quote is, "We have to cure ourselves of the itch for absolute knowledge and power. We have to close the distance between the push button order and the human act. We have to touch people." So I think that last part is interesting, you know, being able to touch people and connect with people. We can't forget about that in today's AI world, where everything is not perfect, but you know, AI is just a whole nother level. It's a whole nother animal of technology that we've never seen before. And so in the midst of all that, we can't forget about that human connection, and we don't want to dehumanize even further than we already have as organizations. And so I think it's a great point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question. I'm curious to get your knee-jerk reaction to this, Isabel, and this is from Brahamandu, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name, which I likely am. But he says, how far are we at to build AI-powered change management tools? All communications are diversified promptly according to multicultural organizations. People acknowledgements embarked with change waves significantly and assessments as well. So he's curious to know, is there anything that that AI could do maybe to enable better change management? Do you see the tools potentially being used to address this human factor that we're talking about?
I love that question. Actually, it is. It can definitely can help with carving specific, obviously, outputs as well, expedite communication, additional details, the training, etc., so that really can be tailored to specific departments of organization or overall across the whole organization. So I definitely do see tremendous intersection and opportunity, and I love that side of it where you actually can bring the data and proper analytics, leveraging also the tool and speed of how you can craft and also execute and implement. But in the same time, now with that speed, it shouldn't be issue anymore that we're lacking of information or lacking of communication or keeping other unknown. But we should not be also leaning fully just on that as well, right? So as long as we serve this as and see this as a tool, we're leveraging with also obviously effective tactics to overcome resistance and effective ways to still engage with people and then have that human touch and personalized ways of how we interact. We're going to be able to then generate tremendous success. But can that expedite, make it more effective, better? Absolutely. I'm totally geeking on right now, testing a couple of different AI platforms and or startups that are really exponentially going to be serving organizations in months and years to come. And it's just wonderful to see that. But then again, without inclusive communication, engagement, and participation by humans with humans, no matter what tool we have under sun, will not get us where we really want to.
I'm here with Isabella Lundberg talking about how to manage resistance to change in an AI world. I've got a lot more questions for Isabella, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Just tell me what you've got to say to me. I've been waiting for so long to hear.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me or visit our website for more details.
Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting and your host of Transformation Ground Control. I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we publish. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 173. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm here with Darian Fiakuski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformation journeys. And I'm here with Isabella Lundberg, and we're in the middle of a chat talking about managing resistance to change in an AI world. How do you think advancing and emerging technologies that continue to exponentially increase in value and just change in general, how do you think that fast pace of technology change that's accelerating, how do you think that's going to affect people's willingness to change, their tolerance for change, their change fatigue? how do you think change management as a discipline gets affected or impacted by these emerging technologies like AI now and in the future as they tend to change faster than humans typically do? What are your thoughts there?
This is really like a catch-22, right? On one hand, we have a great, amazing tool that can do exponentially well, that can also give us outputs and vast information. But ultimately, what we wanted to do is simplify and distill and be able to do a micro, as we're looking and striving for more micro learning on a consistent basis. The same thing we should approach with that. We want to do micro change, right? Change that's going to stick, not just something that we can do in snap in 1 second, but also something that we can truly call it's being transformational because we committed to it, and we know that is not going to create additional pressure, because obviously with everything else that is speeding up, and that creates tremendous pressure already with huge overload and already fatigued, as you mentioned, workforce. So we have opportunity to really look at things from multiple different perspectives. So for example, how is this affecting in willingness for change? For me, what I'm finding to be really fundamentally different is enhancing willingness to change itself, right? How can you do that? We can focus that we can say that we can have a lot more efficiency. We can make things more simplified for you as a result of, and when it's that perception of that efficiency and puts people at ease, right? So it's also empowerment when people feel like, oh my God, I have a choice and I have this particular set of tools. I have this particular tools that I really feel very comfortable that I had a chance to test drive, and also that I really feel like it's going to enhance what I'm doing on day-to-day basis. This is great, right? So from that perspective, we'll look at some things that what can I automate, for example, what I can also have done quicker, faster, so that I can focus on this area, which cause maybe I don't have enough time, or maybe I feel already overworked, right? So when you have these little trade-offs, when you see that, oh, actually this is going to help me, is going to make a huge difference, right? Then also when you look at things from cultural alignment, as I mentioned around, it's like, how is this going to culturally align with technology? So if you're claiming that we're also fast growing startup or one of the top Fortune 500 companies that is technology enabling a new technology, we have to really first see within ourselves, internal within our organization, before we can really prescribe that or demonstrate or deliver to the client, right? So it's very important to really allow that and say culturally how this fits, and then have a people to culturally align with that. But with increase of change, to answer that second point you, Eric, were asking, obviously these complexities and learning curves can be very challenging for so many, right? So again, as I mentioned earlier, micro learning, it's a great avenue when you really feel like, oh, I just got this concept. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. Then you automatically desire and want more, right? Because it feels good. It's like, oh my God, I'm not overwhelmed, or I don't feel like I'm done because I can't keep up with it, or I feel like I'm behind. All of a sudden you start feeling with these incremental 1% daily changes that accumulate to something amazing. And when you take away the fear of losing job from people, right, or lack of trust in technology, those are also elements that I really see great fit for that. So when you know that your job actually will not be eliminated, but it's going to just create more effectiveness and more engagement and more quality, then really start making a huge shift. And obviously, I see some also amazing strategies that we can really encourage to reduce that resistance and increase that adaptation.
That's a perfect segue into my next question, which was going to be, how do you, and you've alluded to some of this. I mean, you've talked about micro learning, you've talked about, you just mentioned culture and how culture can be kind of an enabler to getting people to get used to change and accept change and be excited about it. But what are some of the most effective strategies you've seen organizations use to overcome some of this resistance to change that we've talked about?
Obviously, everybody wants to mitigate that resistance and then encourage that adoption. And first comes from that level of transparency from leadership. It's like, okay, how do we do more inclusive planning and implementation, right? Why we have to do it, how is this going to affect existence of organization or impact of everything else related to organization. So when we have more of those dialogues and more of the opportunity to do these planning sessions where everybody's get to be heard or have a chance to ask questions and feel included, the level of inclusion itself strengthens sense of belonging, strengthens sense of desire to really then do more, right? Obviously effective training and support, because a lot of times, how many times, Eric, I mean, from your expertise in ERP implementations at such a large scale across the world, how many people were getting the tool, but they never felt afterwards that they had a support and in a way that it's being comprehensive and ways that it's conducive for their learning. And we know how adults learn the best, right? It's not just the theoretical, it's that a practical application, and then also opportunity to really eliminate people's fears associated with the new technologies. And then also be able to really feel that capabilities on mastering these tools, it's possible, and then be able to demonstrate that. It's like, oh, this is easy, let me show you. You know, that interaction that puts people in ease right now, I think it's fundamentally major game changer. But what we're seeing, that personally what I'm seeing, that is huge shift is the transparent communication. If we don't have the level of transparency where we can regularly communicate, either as in short-term impacts, long-term impacts, seeing where we at, or have some visual to see the progress. You know, like a car, when you go and drive a car with a full tank of gas, it's like, okay, we started on empty, we're slowly increasing, we're now filling up, you know, or when you also start with the speed, we're on the 0, and now we're going to drive this amazing Ferrari 350 miles, fantastic. But to get there, we have to start with that turning on the engine, with that first 0, right? That shows, and then slowly, incrementally increase that. And when you have that foundation, then you can accelerate. And just because one department or one group or one individual is going faster, you know, that's also a great way to really get infectious desire for others. And we do not get this part very well, which is adaptability with a sense of that feedback loop, right? It's like, how do we provide the feedback in terms of where we are right now in that gauge, how far and how quickly that speed is going to get us? Is it just about speed itself, but it's also where direction, where we're going? And when you align those two things, magic happens, right?
Right. Yeah. And suddenly driving that Ferrari becomes fun again, because we've learned how to master it. We feel comfortable with the Ferrari, and it can be fun. You know, it's interesting. This is a really interesting point. Let me pull it up here. I just lost it in the stream. This is from William on YouTube. And I love this comment.
Yes.
William says, you'll also run into situations where a key person feels the company is dependent on their occasional heroics or have other personal incentives. Training and other S&OP won't be sufficient here. So, you know, he brings up a really good point in that if, let's just say hypothetically, I don't have very good systems at the company I work for, but I've created this great spreadsheet that, you know, I've done all these macros and cool connections that can sort of help me do my job better. And I've done that despite the fact that I don't have good tools at my disposal. It's my heroics, it's my tribal knowledge, it's the value I bring to the organization is sort of overcoming these obstacles. And now if you automate a lot of that and you take that away, you're not doing it to hurt me, but it is kind of hurting me unintentionally. It's making me feel threatened because now my heroics don't matter as much because now
That's a excellent
make it easier,
question.
make it easier for everyone else.
Excellent comment, excellent question. So what happens, what really smart lean agile, effective companies are doing in these situations. They're also looking, because it's cross-pollination, right? Maybe your existing role might also shift. What you typically used to do, now certain things, because they're being automated, that doesn't mean now you're going to be doing less, or simply you're not going to be needed more. Matter of fact, actually, due to AI acceleration, we're calling for different roles, and we're looking from organizational design, looking from job descriptions, looking from just simply intersection. It's so much opportunity to create not only hybrid roles, but also create additional tasks and specifics where you can cross-pollinate not only with your department, but other groups and divisions within organization, which I think, if it's done right, can actually tear down the silos and fragmentation and make everybody truly hero, specifically with early adoption. If you're early adopter, that is recognizing this, where you can also serve and support, and how you can be the bridge between either different departments or the specific different offerings that are in the making. So I would encourage you to say where I can shine now, given that this is being taken away or it's being done in this way. Don't look at it being taken away. Look at it as a new way of doing the business. Okay, now it's being done this way. How can I think 2, 3, 5, 10 steps ahead? And how can I insert myself, or how can I propose additional things that I can do now so that I can be of more value? Because ultimately, as we're driving to make value for our customers, for our clients, we should also look at how can we be valuable internal stakeholders, and that's a perfect example.
Yeah, that's a great example. What about this is from Megan on LinkedIn. Megan asked the question: how would you go about this idea of culture and change management and navigate it in an effective way? So, culture is something that obviously we're not going to change overnight. Culture is definitely not going to change as fast as technology is changing. But what are some tips or strategies or tactics you've seen work to help create that sort of culture that you've been alluding to and describing throughout the conversation here?
I love the question. So for organizations that are recognizing, because just the magnitude of stuff of this change, right? Economy, design of organization, or just the overall number of people, we're going through seeing some unprecedented shrinking of different departments, or just simply where people are feeling like, now I have to, like a deja vu again, take more, bigger, heavier load. That's why we're seeing so much how effective we are, right? And then how highly performing we are. Do we perform well? And why we don't perform well? So with so many other symptomatic issues being on the table, which is perfect storm, in my opinion, for right type of mindset from leadership standpoint to really look at what just happened? How do we execute on this? Where are we at? Is it short-term or long-term? And how is this really already reshaped not only our mission statement, vision, goals, and objective, but culturally what we praise ourselves about, how far away we are from where we're supposed to be. One quickest way we can really see that, and I'm saying this with humility, is by going to Glassdoor and going to Indeed and look at how much somebody endorsed for that particular organization, not only from CEO level, from different departments. People are more than ever sharing exactly how do they feel. And it's interesting, it used to be when people transition, they will leave reviews after they left the job. Doesn't matter which circumstantial avenues are resulting that. Now we're seeing something really interesting in terms of trend when people are sharing while they're still there, because that's kind of also their cry is like, nobody's listening. This is what I'm going to at least make public. So at least hopefully somebody will gain some traction here so that people can at least know. So why I'm sharing this is because then really quickly you can see snippet. Where is this organization? And are they really willing to make that transformation and willing to go through that commitment? And if that commitment doesn't exist from tops, doesn't matter how much committed we are as individual contributors, we're not going to be able to make a dent in that area. So I maybe not answer you're looking for, but what I want to say is really, again, boils down to it. Who is the lead in the ship or department or team, and how flexible they are, and then how can we co-lead together, and how can we also emphasize on those cultural values. And if that doesn't work, then maybe we have opportunity to revisit. Maybe it's time to shift or go maybe different department, or maybe work with a different group, or maybe all together also look at where we can create that synergy elsewhere. Because unfortunately, we don't have time now. It's not any more choice, right? As it's no more choice how technology speeds up, it's not any more choice for organizations to ignore those symptomatic issues because they're costly. They're costing a lot of money. And now, if nothing else, the cost will be one of the triggers. Hopefully, for not too long. Again, as I mentioned earlier, when the pain is so high, then we are finally paying attention and then becoming more willing to adjust. But from positive perspective, I really hope and seeing some really amazing proactive organizations that are bringing teams together so beautifully. And as a result, they are able to actually easily navigate. So change management, it's not even part of the vocabulary. It's how we're doing our organizational transformation, how we're quickly making this happen, and being result driven as a cohesive team versus as a fragment silo departments.
Yeah. Yeah. Great stuff. I mean, now just to bring it all full circle and to sort of put a capstone on everything we've talked about here today, what are some of the ways that you recommend that an organization gets started on their change journeys? If they're just starting a digital transformation or a business transformation, what are some of the first steps that can help us get to this grander vision of that future state that we're talking about?
I really want leaders to humbly look at for opportunities to pause and to truly arm themselves with smart, capable people that they can really understand cause and effects, and also the root issues, so they have really clear assessment what they have, what their DNA of their organization currently is, of their leadership, as well as what the appetite for change is, how well equipped they are for the change and transformation, and also where the gaps are, what they're truly missing. So what are those key ingredients that they have to have in order to make this amazing output, right? And then obviously from those very honest, transparent, transformative assessments and analysis and understanding where we're coming from and where we truly want to go, then to understand what truly needs to happen. We hear this, oh, this is the blueprint for this, or this is our avenues, what you need to do. But if you don't know what your current state is, and if you don't have a aligned understanding and honest, transparent gleaning in truly where you're at, it's going to be really hard, because you're setting up your teams and everybody else to fail, because you're missing so much in order to get where you want to get, right? So not only in terms of talent, in terms of skill, also in terms of processes, and frankly, in terms of the right type of technology.
Well, that's great stuff. I appreciate having Isabella on the show here today. We're going to shift gears, cover a quick debrief here in a moment, and then we're going to shift gears and come back. We're going to talk about my consulting career journey and some of the lessons from that as well. So be sure to stick around. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Could you whisper in my ear?
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstage-consulting.com.
Steve, we've chatted before, but remind me and our audience a little bit more about Epicor and where you're focused these days.
Eric, yep, good to talk to you, and thanks for asking. So Epicor, what we do is we make and sell cloud software for the global supply chain. And when I say that, when a customer purchases our software, we're committed to running their day-to-day business. And this would include everything from finance and procurement to production and sales. It's a responsibility we take very seriously, and it's something I believe we're very good at. We've got an employee base that has the deep expertise to understand their business and run their business. We also compete against 2 or 3 of the largest software companies in the world. So it's not good enough for our products to be good. They have to be consistently great, and that's a really important focus for me. So great products, deep industry expertise. We also focus on the essential workers that make those businesses run. We like to say Epicor's got you covered from the shop floor to the top floor. And when we say that, we really mean it. So that's Epicor.
Your annual Insights User Conference is just around the corner, the Epicor Insights Conference. What are you looking forward to there, and what could we expect to hear about at this conference?
The big thing for me is that we get a lot of what I would call quality time with our customers. And when I say quality time, I mean good old-fashioned, face-to-face, in the same place at the same time, experience with the customers where they tell you what they really think. And in the case of Epicor, we get a lot of great feedback around applications, features, technologies that they love. And in some cases, where we've fallen short. I can tell you that when I think about some of the big projects we've done in the last 7 years that have made the biggest impact on both improving the customer experience, and this would include everything from Prophet 21 and Eclipse, which are distribution products, to Kinetic, which is for manufacturing, to our catalog, which is for automobiles. The feedback that has come directly from our customers at the Insights Conference has had the biggest impact on me. And in many cases, it's resulted in the biggest budgetary decisions I've made to fund projects. So I really appreciate the direct feedback we get. It isn't always fun. It can be a little bumpy, but customers know what they want, and our customers are very deep into their industries. So it's a level of information and intelligence we couldn't get any other way. I always look forward to that. That's the highlight for me.
Welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 173. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Fiakuski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And Darian, we just had Isabella on the show talking about managing change resistance in an AI world. What were some of your thoughts or questions from that conversation?
Yeah, I think overall it was a really great conversation. Some really great points were made. I know you guys kind of dived into how humans aren't necessarily able to change as fast as technology is changing right now, especially with AI. Can you maybe talk further about what that really means?
Yeah. So, one thing that AI has really accentuated or underscored in the industry is just how fast technology changes. AI has been around for a long time, so it's not like AI just now became a thing, but in some ways it has just become a thing because now it's at the forefront of mainstream adoption, just with ChatGPT and the fact that at the consumer level, it's pretty easy and accessible now to access generative AI and other AI tools. And so organizations are obviously following suit and trying to incorporate AI very quickly into their offerings. So I think that's one thing. And so AI is changing quickly too. It's forcing us to change our businesses very quickly. And you talked about, earlier in this segment, you talked about big data and how important the cleanup and the management of data is. And certainly it affects businesses in that way. But I guess where I'm going with that thread is that, technology is like a hockey stick of advancements and acceleration of change and R&D, and it becomes more scalable. There's more startups out there investing in all this cool technology. So it's speeding up. The pace of change within the world of technology is speeding up. But you look at the average, especially like a big organization that has thousands of employees, they just aren't able to change that quickly. You think about a tech startup that creates a cool new technology that's leapfrog technologies. It's a quantum leap in capability. They can do that very quickly and nimbly because they're a small organization. But then you've got these massive organizations that go to adopt that cool new technology, and they're still the same big monolithic, cumbersome company that they've always been. And so they struggle, to change that quickly. And even a small and mid-sized company that, if you're anything but a startup and you've been around for a certain amount of time, there's just a certain amount inertia that goes with that, and you sort of slow down. It seems like the bigger an organization gets, oftentimes they get slower, not by design or by intent. It's just they're bigger. It's like driving a big, massive ship. It's harder to turn than a little cruise boat or speedboat or whatever. Clearly, I'm not a boater because I don't know the right terminology, but hopefully you get what I'm saying as far as big boat versus little boat. Big boat's harder to navigate. Smaller ones typically faster and easier. Um, anyway, that's what I mean by that, is that the technology's just speeding up in organizations or not, and people's ability to change too. Us as humans, I think we're getting better, but we're not adapting as fast as technology is, in my opinion.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. It's really interesting to see like how the future of it will be for when AI keeps changing. I feel like I know we're at a conference right now, and when we were talking to somebody the other day, he said, I watched something from AI two weeks ago and it's already irrelevant. Like that's how fast things
Yeah.
are changing now. So it's really interesting to see, like, obviously humans aren't able to change every 2 weeks. That's kind of unrealistic to expect out of employees from a company. So it'll be really interesting to see, okay, over a long period of time, a couple of years from now, how much change or do humans change along with how much AI changes?
Yeah, absolutely. Something worth noting and keep an eye on for sure is the field advances and as technology continues to advance as well. And I thought that was an interesting comment as well, that it's hard to, even with what we do with this podcast and with YouTube videos, it's hard to stay fresh because you're right. Something we film today and release 2 or 3 weeks from now, within a few weeks after that, something else could change or make it obsolete. So it's always a challenge to stay on top of it all. But that's what makes it fun too. So that's the good news in all of it. Speaking of fun, though, we thought we'd share a little bit about my consulting career journey in this sort of last segment here for today's episode. Talk about some of the lessons from my career journey. I try to make a video here on YouTube that is fairly candid and looking at the things I thought I did well or have thought I've done well so far in my career, and things that I screwed up in my career along the way. So I wanted to make a video about that, sort of telling the story, and hopefully find it interesting. We thought it'd be good for people that are just looking to learn more about some of the lessons from being in consulting, or if you interact with consultants, or if you're just in the technology space in general. I think there might be some good lessons for everyone here, even if you're not in consulting. So we'll play you this clip here from this recent video that I published on YouTube about my consulting career journey.
I started my career in consulting in the late 90s, in 1998. And a lot of times people will ask, well, how did I get into consulting? What was my master plan? And how did I get to where I am today? And while I'd love to say that it was part of some master plan, it actually was not. There's a lot of accidents and interesting twists and turns throughout my career. What I want to do today is talk about how my career started in consulting and how I eventually evolved into the world of technology agnostic consulting and how I got to where I am here today. So first I'll talk about how I broke into the world of consulting, how I entered my career as a consultant. And essentially how it started was back in the late 90s, I was getting my master's in business, my MBA. And while I was in grad school, the summer before my second year of my master's program, there was a CIO at a local company here in Denver where I'm based. And that CIO went to the same college and university that I went to. And he was looking for an intern to help him through an ERP implementation. He was looking for an intern to help document business processes and define what the future state business processes are for his organization as part of an Oracle ERP implementation. And at the time, I was very interested in operational management, supply chain management, things of that nature, and I still am today. But at that time, I thought it'd be pretty cool to do some operational types of stuff like that. So I took this internship for the last year, the second year of my graduate program, and worked with this firm, this manufacturing company, helping them with their ERP implementation, more focused on the process improvement side of things. And then once I graduated, or as I got close to graduation from my master's degree, some of the big consulting firms recruited on campus, and at that time I decided that consulting might be a pretty fun industry. And I enjoyed my time in my internship and thought it'd be a great way to try a variety of different activities, a variety of different types of work and challenges. So I was pretty excited for the opportunity to get into consulting. So it really wasn't until the last few months of my master's program that I decided that I might give consulting a try. But one of the early challenges I ran into when I first started at this big 5 consulting firm that recruited me out of school was that they wanted me to become a technical consultant, and I envisioned myself as more of an operations or strategy type of consultant. And this was back in the late 90s when technology wasn't as big of a deal as it is today. And I really wanted to focus on strategy and operations, not so much technology. So I actually resisted the idea of being a technology consultant at the time I first entered the consulting world, which may sound ironic or strange given that now, 25 years later, I'm focused exclusively on technology consulting. But at the time, I didn't want to do it. I wanted to do strategy, and what I quickly found was that you can't do one without the other. To do strategy and operations consulting, you have to understand technology, and to do technology consulting well, you have to understand strategy and operations. So it took me some time, but eventually I decided that I should embrace the idea of being a technology consultant, and I was early in my career certified in SAP, and that was one of the practice areas that our consulting firm had. And so I'm glad I had that technical certification and that technical background, because that really informed and influenced the way I started to consult over the years in the strategy and operations and the organizational change side of consulting that I tend to focus on. So that's a bit about how I started in my career, but as we'll talk about here in a moment, the career took some interesting twists and turns from there. So one of the things I learned working at the Big Five consulting firm straight out of grad school was that technology consulting firms are not objective. They're extremely biased, and there's a lot of monetary incentives to recommend and push clients in a certain direction. And that's what I learned really early in my career, but at the time I thought maybe it was just the company I worked at. So at that consulting firm I worked for, I mentioned that I was certified in SAP, and the whole idea was that we would go in and do evaluations of client operations, and we would literally always recommend SAP. That was our job, was to recommend and justify why that organization should implement SAP. And we were paid a lot of money to give clients an answer that we already knew what the answer was going to be. And I thought it seemed a little strange at the time. I thought this just doesn't feel right. I don't understand why a client would pay this much money for us to tell them the answer that we've already decided for them. But at the time I thought maybe that's just how consulting firms work, or at least that consulting firm. But what I quickly learned was that it wasn't just that consulting firm. Other consulting firms do the same thing. After that company, went to 2 other consulting firms and learned that that's just how the consulting industry works. And it certainly worked that way at the time. And at the time, what I realized is there weren't really any technology agnostic consulting firms out there. And so I had this idea back in my 20s of creating a consulting company someday that would do tech agnostic consulting and really not take commissions from software vendors, not be under the wings or under the thumb of some of the software vendors, and instead create a consulting company that would focus solely on what clients' needs were. And so that's when in 2005, I decided that I would go off and start an independent and tech agnostic consulting firm. So in 2005, what I found is that I was becoming increasingly frustrated in my career. On one hand, I loved consulting because the work itself was, for the most part, fun. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of exciting learnings and lessons that you get from being a consultant. But on the other side, I didn't like that it was so biased. I felt like we were going in with predefined and canned answers that didn't necessarily reflect clients' interest. So by the time I was 32 years old at the time, and by the time 2005 rolled around, I decided, why don't I just try starting a consulting company and see what happens? And so I created a technology agnostic consulting firm called Panorama Consulting at the time. And I didn't have any contacts really or any big bench of past projects that I could draw from because I was still pretty early in my career. And so what I did is I started a blog that was focused on ERP software and ERP implementations. And it was a way just for me to write and share some of the lessons I had from my limited experience from having helped clients with their ERP implementations. And that may not sound like a big deal now, but back in 2005, there was no one writing blogs about ERP software and enterprise technologies. Blogs at the time were more consumer focused, business to consumer. There wasn't a lot of B2B or technology related blogs at the time, at least at the enterprise level. And so it was one of the first blogs that really focused on that. And as a result, that content started to go viral, especially because I started to write things that people were afraid to say in the industry. Because I was tech agnostic and independent, I started that blog as a way to get attention and to really get leads and to get business in the door. And that turned out to be the whole strategy for how I built Panorama starting in 2005, was to create content, create blogs, and write stuff that would help generate interest in our business and what it was we were doing that was a bit different at the time. So I ultimately did that for 13 years. I worked at Panorama from 2005 to 2018, doing a lot of religious writing of blogs. In fact, I wrote a blog literally every week for 15 years, I wrote a blog a week that was at least 1,000 words, and that was just my routine. And that's really what created a lot of the Google search engine results that we got. And again, at the time, no one was really focused on search engine optimization in 2005, at least not in our space. Now everyone does it, but back then they weren't. And so that's how we got all the business. And the company grew as a result, and it was fairly successful in my tenure from 2005 to 2018. But as I'll discuss here in a moment, I ultimately had to start over in 2018, and that's what I'll get to next.
We're here playing a clip from my YouTube channel, giving an overview of my consulting career journey. We've got more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
My name is Eric Kimberling, and I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to invite you to learn a little bit more about Third Stage Consulting, who we are and what we do. We help clients through their entire digital transformation life cycles, beginning with digital strategy, software evaluation and selection, all the way through and including implementation planning, implementation readiness, and the actual implementation itself. We're technology agnostic, so we only represent our clients' best interests. We do not represent software vendors. But having said that, we work very closely with software vendors, all the leading players that you can imagine we've worked with, both in helping clients evaluate and select them, but also in helping clients implement those solutions as well. So we have a very broad, objective, agnostic view of the market that is meant to really represent your interest as you go through your digital transformation. I also encourage you to scan this QR code right here to get access to our resource center. This resource center has a ton of information, ton of ebooks that are free. You have access to top 10 software rankings, playbooks for how to make your project more successful, guides to change management, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff that are going to help you through your digital transformation. So I encourage you to scan this QR code to get access to those resources. And please feel free to reach out to me directly to brainstorm ideas about your project. Even if it's just informally, you want to bounce around some ideas and get some informal advice, I'd be happy to spend some time with you. So feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. You can also find it in the description field of this video as well.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode 173. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Fiakuski, and we're here playing you a clip of my consulting career journey video from my YouTube channel. Let's continue rolling the clip for the rest of it.
So despite some of the early successes that I had at Panorama, one of the mistakes I made is that I didn't focus much on the culture and developing a healthy culture that was really sustainable and really reflected who I was and what I wanted our company to be. I focused on hiring smart people regardless of what their personality was like, regardless of whether or not it was a cultural fit, thinking that if I hired people smarter than me, what's the worst that could happen? And only good things could happen. And what I learned was if you put a bunch of people together that are really smart, but they don't gel as a team, they don't gel as a culture, you create a mess. And it did create a mess during my time at the company. So much so that I brought on a couple business partners to help me try and grow the company and help us scale it. Long story short, that relationship did not go well. And so in 2018, I chose to leave the company that I started and start a new competing organization called Third Stage Consulting. And so at this time, keep in mind, this is 13 years later. By now, everyone's writing ERP blogs and technology blogs. Everyone else has figured out how to do the search engine optimization. I knew how long it took me to build all the search engine optimization and all the marketing for Panorama. So I knew I had to do something a lot different when I started Third Stage. On one hand, I still wanted to be tech agnostic and I wanted to stay true to that vision. And that was one of the challenges I had with Panorama is we didn't see eye to eye on how to define independence and how to run the company and the overall vision for the company. So I knew I had to do something a lot different when I started Third Stage. And so what I did is I decided, well, why don't I just put a couple videos out on YouTube? I've already tried the blog route. I'll keep writing blogs, but that's not going to be the thing that really gets us momentum. And I was starting over from scratch, obviously. I didn't have any clients at the time. I had built one successful company. I left and had to start over again from scratch. And so I knew I had to create something that was of interest to people. So I decided to try the video route. And I tried a few videos that, again, were disruptive and different and saying the things that no one else wanted to say or could say because they were aligned with software vendors. And ultimately, that content started to go viral. And then over time, I started to double down and do more and more videos over the years. And now, if you fast forward from 2018 to now, at the time I'm recording this video, we far surpassed in less than 6 years what we did in 13 years at Panorama. In fact, in 6 years in, we're about double the size that we ever got to during my time at Panorama. And so that's not to say that it was just because of the videos, but I think it's also because of the focus on culture, the focus on technology agnostic messaging and technology agnostic consulting. That's ultimately what seems to be resonating here in the marketplace. So my journey probably looks a lot different than your journey looks so far in the consulting space or that other colleagues' careers look like. But if I were to share some parting advice to people that are in the world of consulting, there's a few things I'd share. First of all, I'd say that if you're going to become a consultant and an effective consultant, I'd focus on broadening your skill set and making sure that you're not just focused on any one dimension of consulting. Consulting is a bit tricky because you have to be an expert and you have to have a lot of depth, but at the same time, you don't want to have so much depth that it comes at the expense of not having that breadth of experience. So you've got to find that right balance of specialization, but also having breadth and understanding of how your work within your specialization affects other parts of the consulting industry. The other thing I would suggest is that one of the problems with consulting in general is that, at least in the world of tech consulting, there's so much bias still, even today in 2024, as I'm filming this video. Most consulting firms, I'd say 95% or more, are somehow affiliated with a software vendor. So in other words, they're getting commissioned by the big software vendors, and they're making money off the software vendors to promote their product and to specialize in their product. And they build these relationships as a way to build up their companies faster. And quite honestly, if I would have done that back in 2005 when I started Panorama, or even in 2018 when I started Third Stage, I probably could have gotten going a lot faster because I'd be getting leads and business and marketing support from the software vendors. But I opted to go the independent route and the tech agnostic route, which I think long-term will definitely pay off for us as an organization. But I do think that if you're part of the machine or you're part of this ecosystem that's been built and probably isn't going to change anytime soon, in other words, you're probably a consultant that is somehow affiliated with software vendors, that's the way it is, right? And so you're not going to change that necessarily if you opt to stay in that ecosystem. But what you can do is think about and be mindful of how biases that are created by your employer or by your consulting firm might affect your clients. And really think outside the box about how can you do what's right for your clients and really represent your client's interests just as much, and ideally even more, than you do focused on representing the interests of software vendors. This is obviously easier said than done. I asked some tough questions early in my career when I was at Price Waterhouse, and those questions generally weren't well received, especially early in my career, but it is something to be mindful of and just understanding how those biases might affect your clients that you're working with. The other advice I'd have is to keep learning and to keep reinventing yourself. And one thing I learned is that I couldn't keep doing the same thing I did from 2005 to 2018 when I was at Panorama. When I started Third Stage, I had to reinvent myself. Instead of being a blogger that had a young, small company, I knew that I had to do something different, and I decided to go the route of creating a slightly different company, but using video as a way to reach more people and getting even more aggressive in the messaging and the content that we were creating as an organization. So you may not follow that exact same path, but you also have to think about how can you brand yourself, how can you create a name for yourself, and how can you constantly reinvent yourself and keep up with the changing technology landscape and the consulting world in general. So those are just a few tips that I'd share with you. If you want to learn more, I also have some other videos on my YouTube channel. But hopefully in the meantime, this has shared some insights as to how my career has went and how it might relate or inspire you, hopefully, to continue on your career trajectory as well.
So that's a clip from my YouTube channel where I talk about my consulting career journey and some of the lessons I have from it. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that, Darian?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think anybody who's really either looking to get into consulting or just interacting with consultants, anything that has to do with really consulting your journey is a really interesting and I feel like pretty unique one with how you started a couple companies and what your experiences were and how you learned from them. What advice would you give, though, to people that are aspiring to be a consultant and specifically establish themselves in a technology agnostic consulting career?
Well, I'd say it's a good question. First of all, got to think about it for a second. So I'd say that first of all, I would focus on your hard skills and your soft skills, which I think we talked about earlier in this episode when we were talking about some of the Q&A in the opening segment. So I'd definitely focus on the soft skills and hard skills as we've discussed in the opening segment. I'd also, first of all, even before I do that, though, I'd probably look at what kind of consultant do I want to be? Where do I see an opportunity to start? Is it focused on a certain technology or a certain discipline within technology? Do I want to be a program manager longer term, or a technology lead, or an architect, or a functional consultant? What is it I want to do? And then once you sort of identify the track you think you want to go down, knowing that you might change it along the way, but you set down a path, or you set on a course. Then you can start to think about, what kind of hard skills and soft skills are gonna benefit me along those lines. I would argue the soft skills are relevant no matter what part of consulting you do, but the hard skills are probably going to vary depending on which path you take. So those would be a couple things, and then I'd also say, if you can network with people, and it's a relationship-based business. People and relationships are the product in consulting. It's not the technology. It's not the deliverables that are created. It really is the relationships and the trust that are built between client and consultant. So if you can build connections with potential consulting firms or potential, people that work for the potential companies you might want to work for, that's a great way to network and get your way into one of those consulting firms.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And then once you get into one of those consulting firms or you start your consulting career, can you expand on the importance of kind of like reinventing yourself constantly and growing for a consulting approach to stay relevant in this industry?
Yeah, good question. I'd say that first of all, just to set the context, my opinion is that the most dangerous and ineffective consultants are the ones that have been doing it for a long time and they have all the answers. Like they've seen it all, and they don't need to hear about the problems of a client, or they don't need to hear about alternative ways to do things because they know what the right way is. This is what works. This is what I've always done. And they sort of get stuck in their ways, and they start to get a little bit complacent and cookie cutter-ish. They become purists about things that they believe to be truth or reality, or the one way to do things. And they tend to have a lot of blind spots and miss nuances of individual clients or emerging technologies or newer methodologies that might be better than what they've done in the past. And so you want to avoid falling into that trap. And I don't want to sound ageist here, but it's usually people that are older in their careers, and they're closer to retirement than they are starting out. Those tend to be, as a broad stereotype and generalization, those tend to be the ones that are more likely to get set in their ways and sort of miss out. So if you're younger and earlier in your career, the good news is your personality and just where you are in life is probably going to have you, be a little bit more open than others. But I think even then, you still want to just push your knowledge and just recognize that whatever you know today there's probably a blind spot tomorrow because there's something new happening that you don't know about. And so if you just are constantly curious and trying to learn, not just about technologies and trends, but also on the client side, what's happening with their businesses and their industries and what struggles are they facing, and it just really just trying hard to learn. I think if you keep that curiosity and um, that penchant for asking questions and understanding, the minute you lose that, I think you're on the wrong track as a consultant. So if you could just maintain that through your whole career, which is easier said than done for some, that's going to make you successful longer term for sure.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice. I'll definitely take that as somebody who's more so just starting my career than anything, even though I'm not a consultant. I think that's good advice that anybody could really apply to their career path.
Yes, and if you're trying to, if you're afraid to say it, you can say it out loud. I am old. If that's what you're trying to say, you're young. I'm old. I got it. I'm closer to retirement than you are, way closer to retirement. So, although I don't think I'll ever retire, but still, later in my career for sure. But no, but I'm glad it helps. Hopefully, it helps you and helps others. That whether you're just starting out in consulting or if you're mid-career. A lot of people mid-career decide, hey, I'm 35, 40 years old. I've been doing whatever I've been doing, and I want something different. And so those are great. That's a great time to go into consulting, I think, because you've got a lot of experience. You're more mature. You have a lot of lessons and battle scars that you could use to be super effective in consulting. So, I'm a big fan of people starting off early in their careers in consulting, but I'm also a fan of people that mid-career decide, hey, I want to do something different and try consulting, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for people like that.
Hmm. Yeah, super good.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thanks for another great episode, Darian, and thanks to Isabella for being here today. Thank you to the audience for the great questions. Thank you in advance for sharing this content with anyone you think might be interested in that. We always try to spread it to as many people as we can. So be sure to check out new episodes every week. You can go to transformationgroundcontrol.com, and we release new episodes every Wednesday. So you can see all the new ones and all the past episodes all at transformationgroundcontrol.com. So be sure to check it out. Show is produced by Major Tom Productions, sponsored by Third Stage Consulting. You can learn more about Third Stage Consulting by going to thirdstage-consulting.com, and be sure to connect with Darian and I on LinkedIn and social media if you don't already. So hope you have a great day. We'll see you next week on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control. Take care and have a great week.